Human sacrifice, dogs and cats living together. That's hysteria. She may have had second billing in her own group, but everyone knew who the star of Ike and Tina Turner review was. It was Tina Turner. It was Tina Turner. Yes, it was. It was Tina Turner the world came to see when she and her husband Ike toured with Rolling Stones in the 1960s and scored a Grammy-winning hit with Proud Mary in 1971. It was Tina Turner who ignited the stage with her raw voice and her frenzied, sweat-soaked dancing as she became one of the most dynamic and influential performers in popular music. And it was Tina Turner who, after walking away from the spotlight and her volatile, abusive husband, remade herself as a solo artist, selling more than 100 million records, winning 8 Grammy Awards, and becoming a brighter star in her 40s and 50s than she had ever been in her youth. Her overtly sexual costumes, dance moves, and persona were imitated by performers across generations, from Mick Jagger to Madonna to Beyonce to Cardi B. They all copied the one who is the greatest. Miss Turner, whose saga of struggle and revival was defiantly expressed in her 1984 hit song, "What's Love Got to Do with It?" and a best-selling autobiography, I, Tina. She died a few days ago, May 24th, at her home in Switzerland. She was 83. And in recent years, she had a stroke, kidney disease, and other ailments. Her longtime publicist confirmed her death, but did not provide an immediate cause. Miss Turner, who grew up as Anna Mae Bullock in rural Tennessee, was living in St. Louis in the late 1950s when her older sister arranged an introduction to Ike Turner, who was performing at a local club. He was already an established musician at 26 and had co-written a 1951 rhythm and blues hit called Rocket 88, featuring his hard-driving piano, and sometimes called the first rock and roll record. At first, Mrs. Turner, then only 18, was put off by Ike and his unsmiling appearance. "I remember thinking that I had never seen anyone that skinny," she told Rolling Stone magazine in 1986. "But when he walked out, he did have a great presence. Boy, he could play that music. The place just started rocking, and I wanted to get up there, and I wanted to sing so bad," is what she said. During an intermission, the band's drummer, her sister's boyfriend, set up a microphone, and Mrs. Turner sang a song by B.B. King. Well, Ike, when he heard me, he rushed over to me, and he said, Girl, I didn't know you could sing." And then the band came back, and I kept singing. She began to work with Ike's band, the King of Rhythm, but was not spotlighted until 1960. When a male singer didn't show up for a studio recording session, Mrs. Turner stepped up to the microphone to sing "A Fool in Love," written by Ike himself. It was meant to be just a demo recording, but Mrs. Turner's impassioned performance was released on a small label and credited to Ike and Tina Turner, a stage name bestowed by Ike. He chose the name because Tina rhymed with Sheena, Queen of the Jungle, a vine-swinging character in a comic book and a 1950s TV series. "A Fool in Love" sold 800,000 copies became a #2 R&B hit, and reached number 27 on the Billboard Top Hot 100 chart. The group had a few other minor R&B hits, but never quite reached the nationwide fame. Offstage, Mrs. Turner was raising 4 boys, 2 of her own and 2 of Ike's sons from another relationship. Her older son was from a relationship with Raymond Hill, a saxophonist in Ike Turner's band. Ike was the father of her second son, born in 1960. She and Ike were married in 1962. Working on the club circuit, Tina and the Ikettes, 3 women who were backup singers and dancers, developed a high-energy, dramatically choreographed stage act that made other groups look like statues. Yet behind the joyous dancing and music, Mrs. Turner wrote in her 1986 memoir, I, Tina, Ike Turner controlled the group like a sadistic little cult. He carried a gun and allowed Mrs. Turner no final independence. No financial independence whatsoever. As the group's profile began to rise with an appearance in 1966, a concert film, The Big TNT Show, Tina Turner caught the attention of music producer Phil Spector, who saw her as a potential star. A major hit maker of the early 1960s, Spector was known for his studio wizardry and wall of sound musical style. He co-wrote a song with Jeff Barry and Ellie Greenwich, River Deep Mountain High, that he asked Mrs. Turner to record. Insisting a tonal artistic control, Spector agreed to credit the recording to Ike and Tina Turner, so long as if Ike stayed out of the studio. The long nighttime recording sessions, Mrs. Turner took off her sweat-drenched blouse, and was wearing only her bra when she sang countless takes of the vocal track. Wow. River Deep begins on a plaintive, introspective note. When I was a little girl, I had a rag doll. Before building to a frenzied climax, do I love you? Oh, my, oh, my, oh, my. Oh, baby, River Deep, Mountain High. Rolling Stone later ranked River Deep number 33 on the magazine list of the 500 greatest songs of the rock era. It became a hit in Europe, but never caught on in the United States, reaching only number 88 on the Billboard Pop chart. But it was too black for pop stations. Too black for pop stations. Too pop for the black stations, is what Mrs. Turner noted in her autobiography. Still, it marked a turning point for Mrs. Turner. She realized she didn't need Ike Turner to make an important record, and that she was a singer with a voice of her own. You know why I always loved that song, she told the Chicago Tribune? People used to call me a dancer, not a singer. So when I got with Phil, I started charging ahead, and I was like, no. I just want you to sing, is what he said to me. In 1966, the Rolling Stones invited the Ike and Tina Turner Revue to join them for the first of several tours, introducing them to a wider audience. Jagger came into the dressing room. Mrs. Turner shared with the Ikettes. She wrote in a 2018 memoir, My Love Story, and said in his unmistakable voice, I like how you girls dance. We'd seen him strutting with his tambourine on stage, and he was a little awkward back then as a white guy, she continued, but we pulled him into our group, taught him how to do the pony, and that little old white boy Mick Jagger caught on quite fast. Not that he ever gave me and the girls credit for his fancy new footwork. He should have. But to this day, Mick likes to say, my mother taught me how to dance. And I say, okay, that's fine. But I know better. During the late 1960s and early 70s, Ike and Tina Turner began to record versions of songs by other artists, including the Stones, Honky Tonk Women, Otis Redding's I've Been Loving You Too Long, And most memorably, Proud Mary, written by John Fogerty of the Creedence Clearwater Revival. In the original recording and in every performance for the next 3 decades, Mrs. Turner opened the song with a signature introduction that her audiences recited in unison with her. We never, ever do nothing nice and easy. So we're going to do it nice and rough. Proud Mary reached number 4 on the pop charts in 1971, sold more than 1 million copies, and won a Grammy Award for the best R&B performance. The group had a minor hit in 1973 with Nutbush City Limits, a tune written by Mrs. Turner about her Tennessee roots. She released a pair of poorly received solo albums. But her life in the 1970s was increasingly scarred by her worsening relationship with Ike. He had a drug problem, flaunted his affairs with other women, and sometimes beat Tina, leaving her with swollen eyes. One time, a broken jaw. He used his fist, a folded wire hanger, a wooden shoe tree, or even a stretcher. I was trapped, she told Rolling Stones. The success and the fear came almost hand in hand. When I finally went to tell that I didn't want to go on, that's when he got the shoe stretcher. In 1976, Mrs. Turner slipped out of her hotel room and down the alley in Dallas, where the band was on tour. She, 36 cents, a gas station credit card, and the clothes on her back, she found refuge with friends in exchange for cleaning their houses. She lived on food stamps. She began to practice Buddhism, Eastern religion, which she gave a newfound inner peace to herself. After the divorce in 1978, Tina never saw Ike again. Her financial settlement was not nearly enough to pay off hundreds of thousands of dollars in back taxes and broken concert contracts. It was very difficult to explain to people why I stayed, she later told the Washington Post. I left Tennessee as a little country girl and stepped into a man's life who was a producer and had money and who was a star in his own right. And at one time, Ike had been very nice to me. It was only in the later years that he changed to become a horrible person. She began to appear on TV game shows and in Las Vegas lounges. In 1979, Mrs. Turner found a new manager who had helped guide other people like Olivia Newton-John. And with Miss Turner, he became the architect of one of the most remarkable comeback stories in the history of show business. He arranged for Mrs. Turner to open up for Rolling Stones in 1981, and her cover version of Al Green's Let's Stay Together became a hit in England and in the U.S. dance clubs. Yet, as late as 1983, she still didn't have a recording contract with a major label. That year, David Bowie told executives of Capitol Records that he had to skip a Manhattan party in his honor because his favorite performer was appearing at a nightclub. And they said, well, who is that? So they came along, and voila, there I was on stage, Miss Turner told the Washington Post. They signed me simply because David Bowie was a fan. Released to modest expectations in 1984, her album Private Dancers sold tens of millions of copies. Miss Turner won 3 Grammy Awards, including Record of the Year, for the album top single, What's Love Got to Do with It? which was her only #1 hit in 1984 as a solo artist. At first, she was reluctant to sing the tune by 2 British songwriters until she found the right vocal treatment, pitched somewhere between a snarl and a leering come on. What's love got to do with it? What's love but a second-hand emotion? What's love got to do with it? Who needs a heart when a heart can be broken? Then in her mid-40s, Mrs. Turner became an international superstar. Acclaimed for the next 25 years, her breathtaking performance in which she wore elaborate wigs and skimpy miniskirts that showed off her well-toned legs. Everything I've done for my act has really been so practical, she told Rolling Stones in 1986. The short dresses work for me on stage because I've got a short torso and because there's a lot of dancing and sweating. I never advertise myself for men. I always work for the women. Because if you got the girls on your side, then you know you've got the guys. Miss Turner's 1984 memoir, written by MTV's Kurt Loder, formed the basis of an Oscar-nominated 1993 film, What's Love Got to Do with It?, with Angela Bassett portraying Miss Turner, and Lawrence Fishburne as Ike Turner. Her life also inspired by a hit jukebox musical, Tina, that opened up on Broadway not too long ago in 2019. Miss Turner collaborated with U2's Bono on the theme song for the 1995 James Bond movie GoldenEye and appeared at the 2000 Super Bowl. And in 2009, she retired from performing altogether. She was 70 years old. Born Anna Mae Bullock on November 26, 1939 in Brownsville, Tennessee. Spending her childhood in nearby Nutbush, her father was a farm overseer and her mother was a beautician, among other jobs. Her parents had a relationship that was rocky and often lived away from her family, leaving young Anna Mae with grandparents and other relatives on farms in western Tennessee. I wasn't sad about it, she told Rolling Stone in 1986. It was just a fact that my parents didn't care that much for me. In the 1950s, Mrs. Turner was reunited with her mother, who was working as a maid in St. Louis after finishing high school. She worked in a hospital before launching her music career. Mrs. Turner had several acting roles in films, where she even appeared for The Who's rock opera Tommy, and a decade later, she opposite of Mel Gibson in the dystopian film Mad Max, Beyond the Thunderdome, which she featured her hit song, We Don't Need Another Hero. She turned down a role in Steven Spielberg's 1985 The Color Purple, which featured abusive men in the rural South, saying, I lived that story. I don't need to act it. Miss Turner was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame along with Ike Turner in 1991. Ike was in prison at the time and on drug charges. Ike Turner died in 2007. She received the Kennedy Center Honors Awards in 2005 and was named to the Hall a second time as a solo performer in 2021. In 1986, Mrs. Turner met German music executive Erwin Bach, who was 16 years younger than she was. They lived together for years before marrying in 2013. Mrs. Turner had several serious health problems, including a stroke needing a kidney dialysis in her 70s, and Bach donated one of his kidneys to Tina in 2017. Survivors include her husband, her oldest son, Craig, who she died by his side in 2018. I don't know what took him to the edge, she told the BBC. Another son of hers, Ronnie Turner, died in 2022, a mother bearing two of her children. I can only imagine. Despite her sensuous and amazing stage persona, Miss Turner said that the person she admired most was the soft-spoken, well-spoken former First Lady, Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis. My taste was high, she told Rolling Stone. So when it came to role models, I looked at presidents' wives. Of course, you're talking about a farm girl who stood in the fields dreaming years ago, wishing she was that kind of person. But if I had been that kind of person, do you think I could sing with the emotions that I do? You sing with those emotions because you've had pain in your heart. Tina Turner, one of the most prolific performers that we have ever known. Show-stopping pop music sensation, whose personal saga of struggle and revival was defiantly expressed in her 1984 hit song, What's Love Got to Do with It? Tina Turner, show-stopping pop music sensation, dies at 83. Broadcasting live here on the only radio show, award-winning radio show, dedicated to the magic and nostalgia of Saturday morning, hosted by me, a real puppet. From the most trusted puppet in media, reporting since Roswell, I'm Sam Newsman, and this is Saturday Morning.
Our show opens right now with the exciting Ike and Tina Turner review, and they are wonderful. So